Good afternoon to you. Mark out of HurricaneTrack.com here. In this video, I am going to talk about what we are doing with Patreon. You've heard me mention this from time to time. I try not to overwhelm you with it because talking about money is the least favorite of my duties. But if I don't do it, we don't get to fund what we're doing, not nearly the way we have been, and so it is a necessary task. But with that comes some incredible achievements and some amazing opportunities coming up, not only for me personally, but involving a lot of our patrons, our supporters, etc. So that's what this video is going to go over. We're going to talk about the past, the present, the future, what I intend to do with this going forward in this amazing world that we call crowdfunding. So thank you in advance for tuning in and checking out this video. It's all about what we are doing with our crowdfunding that we know as Patreon. Real quick, a bit of history. Starting in 2005, we began a membership service to help pay for our live streaming video that we began during that hurricane season. We had 3 live camera boxes. It was very expensive to do back then. It's still very expensive, but for different reasons. And we needed a way to pay for it. So we created this membership-based site that we called Hurricane Live Net. And over the years, it has evolved and become different names. We had HurricaneTrack Premium Services. Now it is called HurricaneTrack Insider. And for the longest time, it was all based on PayPal. You would sign up through PayPal, and you'd be charged usually an annual subscription fee, and that was it. And we developed this amazing community. We added chat starting in 2010. And really developed this world of our own social media before social media was really a thing, before Instagram, Twitter, instant messaging, file sharing, all that kind of stuff. We were doing that going all the way back to really 2005 and especially 2010 and later, as we move towards where we are now in 2019. And really the last couple of years through this work that I've been able to do using Patreon, things have accelerated faster than I could have ever imagined, and we are doing some incredible things. So the idea of crowdfunding has been around for a long time. You've heard of Kickstarter, GoFundMe, etc. People have raised money for all kinds of things, for medical needs, a trip somewhere. Reed Timmer did it several years ago on Kickstarter to raise money for his ongoing tornado videos that he was doing, his documentary-style TV show. After the Storm Chasers series was canceled from Discovery Channel, it had outlived its durability on Discovery, so Reed turned to Kickstarter and helped fund it that way. And other projects have come about because of crowdfunding. You get a bunch of people together with like-minded interests and pool their resources, and in this case monetary and other resources, and magical things can happen. That is also the case with what we have done with Patreon. So let me just get rid of my face for a little bit. I'll come back later and say hello again. So we know HurricaneTrack.com. This has been around since 2000, well, almost 2000, since 1999 through 2019. I was trying to say a combination of 20 years, whatever. My brain sometimes works faster than my mouth because I got a lot to say. 20 years the website has been around, and it's really the brand now, okay? Back then, it was the place where you would go for pretty much all of your hurricane information. There was very little else out there. You had a few other websites, Hurricane City, GoPBI, which became Storm 2K, FL Hurricane, Florida Hurricane, and there were others, all right? But HurricaneTrack was definitely up there with the rest of the internet in starting this whole hurricane tracking. I don't want to call it a craze, but we were at the start of it, and we did some amazing things. Then with social media and Facebook and everything else, anybody can post whatever they want on social media, and there's a lot more competition out there in terms of websites. But one thing that has not changed is what we do in the field. And like I say often, I might be the face of this. Speaking of faces, here I am again, the front man of it, but it's definitely a team effort. I've worked with a lot of people over the years that have helped to make things happen and make things possible, but this is the crux of it all. This is where it all comes back to, that whole HurricaneTrack brand. That's why I always tag this as Mark's out of HurricaneTrack.com. That's where it's all started. I mean, here it is on the shirt, the logo on the shirt there, and we've done a lot in 20 years. Now, through Patreon and the crowdfunding that we're able to access because of this and integrate that in to the HurricaneTrack universe, we're able to do a lot more than I ever thought possible. And within Patreon, we have our own little world of social media going on, where I can post just like I would on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or YouTube to the group of people, which now is comprised of around 300 folks from all over the world. And it's amazing what we can do here. They can interact back and forth, and it's just like a dream come true. But what exactly is Patreon? Well, it is set up by a group of people who wanted to do something for creators. Mainly the YouTube crowd that lost a lot of their funding because the advertisers were getting upset from different bad apples doing some bad things on YouTube, and it became very difficult to monetize what people were doing on YouTube. There was this big change in the way Madison Avenue was looking at the monetization of some of these influencers on YouTube and elsewhere. So Patreon came along, and as I understand the history, they wanted a way to change that. They wanted a way so that creators could have a monthly support group of people who believed in their work, creating everything from animation, short films, blogging, podcasting, to other things that we might think of as very mundane and not interesting. There are people who are interested in it. You think about how many billions of people live on the planet and how many of those have access to the internet. Well, this provided a great way for people to contribute to people that are out there looking at things, like I said, from creating sculptures, art, painting, animation, anything in the visual, the audio, to just talking about their daily life, and they would have a platform to do that, the internet, and a way to pay for it, Patreon, patrons, going all the way back to the days of William Shakespeare, where different patrons of the theater would fund works from Shakespeare, as an example, and then they would reap the benefits. They would get their name on stuff, brought to you by, Lord so-and-so, or whatever. And, they would have top billing as a producer, so to speak. They get the best seats. They can invite their friends. Look at what I have produced, they would say. And that's how the arts were funded and still are funded today. You hear about patrons of the arts all the time. Well, in the world of weather, it's the same kind of thing. It is a way for people to support something that they believe in, but it's also, in my case, a way to help me, to help you, to help me, to borrow that titular line from Jerry Maguire. You remember that. Help me, help you to help me. That's a great way to look at this. And you think about what Levi Cowan has done. He's also a creator on Patreon. The folks at Weather Nerds that are behind weathernerds.org. And there are other people in the weather world, storm chasers, weather aficionados, you name it. They are using Patreon. So I was introduced to Patreon 3 or 4 years ago by a real good friend of mine named Dan, who told me about this guy that would kind of do these blogs and little video updates about cruising, going on cruises. And the guy was making, several $100s a month. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And he had a good following. And Dan encouraged me, stick with Patreon, figure out where it will fit in what you're doing, and I think it'll catch on. And now here we are. I think this is my 3rd or 4th year going into Patreon. It's definitely the 3rd year, maybe the 4th. And we went from just a few patrons a month now to over 300. And I'm getting closer to that goal of bringing in about $4,500 a month. Now I'm going to talk about what we do with that funding and whatnot in just a minute. I want to be very transparent about it, but also very honest about how this works and what the funding is used for. And you got to realize this is what I do for a living. This is my full-time job, and we'll get to that. So that's a little bit of a history of what we're doing, what Patreon is, and a little bit how it integrates into the HurricaneTrack brand. So going back to this, we've had this login section on HurricaneTrack.com for years. Like I said, going back to when we needed it to help to fund the live streaming video. Now it opens up this amazing world of more than just live video. It is a community where I can put, the stuff in the chat, the Twitter. It's very hard to describe. It's like its own little universe of people who support me, but they also support each other. And over the years, it's had different iterations and evolutions of what we were doing with it. We have tracking tools that are unique, and we're going to be building upon this coming up. We used to have Storm Pulse, but that is no longer available to us. Things evolve, things change, and we're going to create some new tracking tools for next year. We do have our live video feeds, which is very, very, very popular. And this is what our digital dashboard looks like as it populates with the different cameras that we have running on a permanent basis. Some of these are only active when something's happening, but we do have cameras down in the Virgin Islands, one out in Nevada, one over on the Outer Banks. We can put the radar in there, and then everyone can chat about it. These are all these are patrons. These are people that support what we're doing, but they also have a vested interest themselves. Howard is from Bermuda. Tim is from St. Thomas. Carrie is from Houston. And there are many, many others. Hundreds of people over the years have been a part of this, and it's all integrated now through Patreon. And it has been remarkably successful. Not only because of the funding, but as important, and maybe even more important, because of what people have been able to contribute. One of our patrons, his name is Scott. He lives up in the Raleigh area of North Carolina. He heard me talking about the need for a device that we could put on that Jersey wall that you see there, or center divider, whatever you want to call it, that concrete wall that are on the sides of overpasses, and sometimes they go down the middle of the interstate. I was talking about this more than a year ago, that we needed something like a saddle that we could put on there and attach equipment to. Lo and behold, Scott knew exactly what I was talking about. And there's a company that makes these for DOT, and he said, I'll get you one, and you can test it out. I did that, and now we have, I don't remember, 6 or 7 of them, because Scott funded that. He sent them to me, drop-shipped them from the manufacturer to my doorstep, and that is one of those devices holding one of our camera systems for Imelda in the middle of Interstate 10 near Baytown, Texas, just a few days ago there, for that big flood event that we had. My vision of immersing you right in the middle of the action came true. There is no better example of putting you in the middle of the action than sticking something like this on the middle of busy I-10 in a major flood situation. So that's an example there. Our drop, let me get one. Hold on, step away. I should have had this ready. Sorry. These little devices right here, holding it up in the microphone like that's the camera. You can tell I'm excited about this. I've been wanting to put a video like this together all summer, especially as things have increased with our patronage. That's what this is. That's a little drop. It's from Kestrel, and it measures pressure and temperature and humidity, all crowdfunded. People sent these to us, and we have put those out. And you see that 959 there, just as an example, a screen capture from some of the data that those provide. That was in the eye of Hurricane Dorian in Buxton, North Carolina. So we have several of these that we place. These are real, tangible things that I did not have to pay for. I didn't have to take money out of my family's, account, so to speak, and pay for these things, because you guys did. And it's made a big difference. All right, so that's one example. Look at all of that equipment in the back of the vehicle. You see Brent over there. Most of that is paid for by you guys, okay? It's not self-funded. You know, I don't work somewhere as a manager at like GE or at the hospital or whatever. I'm not a doctor, and then I do this as a hobby, because it would take quite the income to be able to fund something like this. Sorry, somebody messaging me, and I forgot to turn off my notifications. The point is, that's just about a third of the equipment that we now have. This is everything loaded up as we were getting ready for Dorian. Brent had purchased that Honda generator. We haven't used it yet. I think that day is coming, though. But you guys funded this, okay? And that is so important. The live cameras, those GoPros, those are the smaller boxes. Here, I'll draw on it. These are the live cameras here. These are the GoPro boxes here. We have a bunch of equipment inside, bungee cords, whatever. And, you know, the Nest camera up front that functions as our vehicle cam, you know, to the MiFi that we use that streams it out. That's provided to us from one of our patrons. His name is Tim Bruno, and he lives up in Alaska currently. Tim's been a crowdfunder going all the way back to 2004 and 5. He knows what I'm talking about. Go look at some of my documentaries on YouTube. You'll see who Tim is. Hint, Hurricane Ivan, all right? So another example. You guys did this. Crowdfunding, that's you. You should all be very proud of yourselves. These are two of our patrons right here. Wish I could, and I'm going to get to this. I was getting ahead of myself. I'd love to have a picture of all of you. Maybe we'll do that one day. Or a map showing where you all of you live. These are just two of them. That's Carlos there with the hat, and then Brent with, you know, the crazy hair. And he was laughing about that. He's like, I got to get a haircut. We're in San Juan there at Cheesecake Factory getting ready for when we were dealing with Dorian back when it was threatening Puerto Rico. These are the real people behind this. Brent, one of our hands-on patrons, as well as Carlos. I want to do more of that, where not only are you contributing financially, but you also help out physically with helping with stuff, from either helping in the field to sending us equipment back. You know, we had Anthony down in Florida that did that. We've had people that have helped out in more ways than you guys will ever know. Absolutely incredible. Somebody keeps messaging me. So anyway, so that's a look at just a smidget of a look at what we have done this season, just this season alone, okay? And there's much more, and we'll get to that. So what about the next, I don't know, 30 to 90 days or so? Well, from the weather coverage point of view, hold on, let me just respond. Hey, look, this is my life. This is how it really goes. It's my wife, and she's texting me. I will handle it. She's wanting to know about tumbling for my daughter tonight. Yep, you got kids, you got responsibilities, and I play taxi driver when I'm not doing this. If you've got kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So for the next little while, of course, we're going to finish out the 2019 hurricane season, and I think we're going to have a couple of more impacts coming up. I talked about that in today's video, the Hurricane Outlook video. Then we move into winter storms and nor'easters. And make no mistake, this is my second passion when it comes to this weather coverage stuff. And we didn't have any winter storms or nor'easters to really speak of along the East Coast this past season, which was probably a good thing because I had to recover from the aortic dissection that I had last December. If you don't know about that, we'll get to that. You'll see. And so it's probably a good thing that I didn't have to go out and wrestle any winter storms, because I was losing weight and getting better, getting more healthy. But I think that you're not going to have 2 winters in a row without any major winter storm action along the East Coast. So that's the next thing that we will start covering after hurricane season. So even though hurricane season is going to end November 30th, stick around, because there's a lot more to do and to cover from the weather coverage side of things. Now, I'm not even talking about some of the other things we got coming up. Wait till you see that. Then next spring, I'm very seriously considering using our high altitude balloon project that we have for hurricanes and taking it out to Tornado Alley when we have a big outbreak and figuring out something that we can do that will contribute to the science as well as provide some stunning visuals of what these supercells look like from the stratosphere. All right? So there's this, you already know about this giant ground game going on, and sometimes it literally is a game, and a dangerous game at that, on the surface, with hundreds if not thousands of storm chasers, especially when there is a big outbreak. I don't want to get involved with that, from a field perspective. It's too crowded. I don't know what I could do that would help the science, and I would just be in the way. But doing this balloon idea, and we're going to meet with some people and talk about what we could possibly do, could be very interesting and a different angle on that whole tornado chasing thing. So stay tuned. That's one of the ideas I've got for next year in the spring, probably next May. And then, of course, the 2020 hurricane season. Hard to believe, isn't it? 2020 coming up. And next year is an election year. So you know that it'll be busy. They always are, except for the year 2000, which ended up as a tie. You know how that went. Everything's been very busy in an election year. Anyway, so we won't even go there. 2020 is coming. We will have it covered. More like capable than you. It's just beyond imagination what we're going to be able to do. So that's a look ahead from the weather coverage side of things there. All right. So what's next? Upcoming projects. Let me bring me back. All right. Put me in the middle here. Ta-da! So aside from the weather coverage, one of the big things I want to be able to do with Patreon is develop original programming that, as I've said before, you might have heard me say this, kind of reminds you of the Netflix or Amazon Prime for weather geeks. An outlet for original weather programming, mainly focused around hurricanes, hurricane-centric for sure, but other very interesting weather phenomenon, from winter storms, flood events, the desert monsoon, El Nino, whatever. And develop programming very similar to the documentaries that I do for the long term, okay? And with that comes some amazing opportunities to continue to be creative with what I do with my programming, both from the actual productions, the music involved. I love creating music for these things. And then the storytelling, and maybe take it into some different directions that we've never been able to do before. So that is the setup for what I call upcoming projects. So, starting in December, podcasts are a big thing. People love podcasts, and I'm going to start one starting the first week of December, and it is going to be called Stories from the Hurricane Highway. And it's going to be pretty awesome. In fact, one of these, there it is, that's the title card for it. All right? So, voila, there it is. And ta-da, whatever. All right? So, I'm excited. I think this could be really, really interesting for people. It is going to be a weekly podcast that literally starts at the very beginning of my career. It'll be about an hour to 90 minutes long, audio only. I'll have some little theme music at the beginning, and it'll go through, all 25 years that I've been doing this, or more, whatever it is. How I got into it. Some of the adventures, literally right there, just like it says in the title. Stories from the Hurricane Highway. That's the official title. And this will be exclusively available on Patreon. I'm not going to put these on YouTube. I'm not going to put these on Apple Podcasts or anything like that. It's going to be a Patreon exclusive. And it doesn't matter what tier you are pledged at. I hate using a preposition at the end of a sentence, but there you go. So whether you are $1 or $1,000, okay? And yes, some people do the $1,000. It doesn't matter. You will have access to this exclusively on Patreon, all right? So I am extremely excited about this. It is going to be just storytelling. I'll go back and reflect on my career, some of the adventures, the misadventures, the people that I've worked with, you name it. And each week after the first one, I will encourage you to leave questions and comments and whatnot, and ideas for what to talk about in an upcoming episode. And I can do that. Now, we won't be talking about upcoming hurricane season stuff. This is a retrospective, not a look ahead. There won't be any news, like, okay, today in the tropics or this. It's all going to be just reflecting on the past. Stories. True stories, I should say. No embellishments here from the Hurricane Highway. This journey, hundreds of thousands of miles of hitting the road, just like the graphic shows there. And that's a pretty cool graphic. Wait till you see the next one that I'm going to show you as we move on into other facets of this announcement here. But starting in December, original series podcast. Of course, I'm the host. Stories from the Hurricane Highway. I look forward to that. Where were we? All right. Then, the next part. And boy, talk about biting off more than you can chew. I've debated with myself, with my colleagues, with my wife, what do I do with my whole Tracking the Hurricanes original feature-length documentaries. They're not over. I'm not going to never produce one. But you know how with Star Wars, as an example, they had, episode 4, 5, 6, and then they went back and did 1, 2, 3, and then they did, these 7, 8, 9 are coming out, whatever. And then they started doing these Star Wars stories, right? And with that, they did Rogue One, and then Han Solo, and whatever. So, similar to how they've done that, that's what I'm going to do with this new web series called The Hurricane Highway. So I will still eventually do another feature-length documentary, but for this coming winter and for next year, for 2020, I'm going to do a web series. And this is what it looks like. Hear the kids screaming? Hang on. Need to message my daughter who's watching her. All right. Please keep Daphne, that's my 4-year-old, quiet. There we go. Part of the Hurricane Highway is all the kids I've had and those adventures. Seriously, this is something I'm both terrified of and very excited about. The Hurricane Highway is going to be an original series, like a television show. You know how Netflix has Netflix original series? Well, this is the same kind of thing on Patreon. And it will also be on Amazon Prime Video. So let me explain this. So Stories from the Hurricane Highway is a podcast, and it's kind of an offshoot to what we're doing here. The Hurricane Highway is a new original series, multiple episodes, 45, 55 minutes each, something like that, reflecting on 2019 hurricane season, basically, the year as a whole. Our journey in 2019 down the Hurricane Highway. It's a metaphor, right? You understand that. And by the way, that graphic right there, when you see what I did with the original picture to make that graphic, I had a lot of fun with that. That's a real picture, digitally altered to give me that cool looking sort of, almost film noir look to the whole thing. That it's kind of a dark and brooding adventure, with peril and, uncertainty, whatever. Some drama. We don't manufacture any drama. The drama is what nature provides. And that's what this is going to be. An original series. This will drop starting in January 2020. And again, it'll be available to all of our patrons first. So when the first episode comes out sometime in early 2020, January 2020, I'll put it on Patreon. And when I say I put it on Patreon, that means it'll also be part of HurricaneTrack Insider. Those two are more or less the same thing, just to make that clear. So whatever level you are on Patreon, you'll have access to this. $1 or more, doesn't matter. And then a couple of weeks after each one drops on Patreon, I'll go publish them on Amazon Prime Video to rent or to purchase the season in its entirety. So they'll be renting. I'll rent them out for $2.99 each, or the entire season for $14.99, something like that. But patrons, Patreon, you'll have access to it first. First episode will drop in January 2020. I'm going to develop this whole theme behind it, a different look, a little different style of filmmaking, a very big challenge. I even bought a new keyboard. I wish I could show you. It's over there. A modern workstation from our funding from Patreon to compose the music for this thing, because I want the music to have a little bit more modern edge to it. You know, you'll see. It's going to be both very difficult and rewarding at the same time, to be able to take everything we've done since December 1st, 2018, all the way to November 30th, 2019. That's the journey down the hurricane highway that I'll show you in this upcoming web series. And what's nice, I guess, I'm recording this on September 30th. We don't know how it's going to end yet. Are we going to have a big conclusion like we did with Michael at the end of the 2018 Tracking the Hurricanes documentary? I don't know. That part hasn't been written yet, for sure, on so many levels. So stay tuned to find out. So that's coming up in January. 6, 7, 8 episodes, something like that. Brent's going to help me with it. I'll show you how you can get involved in just a minute as well. I'm, like I said, both excited and extremely terrified, because deadlines, creativity, writing, all that. But you know what? It's fun when you produce something that people appreciate. It's the challenge of it. And I like a good challenge. So that's coming up. All right. And then May 2020, finally, I'm going to get to do this. I call it, let's move it over. Oh, leave me there. Hurricane U. And again, that's not a verb like, Hurricane U, man. No. It's Hurricane University. And this is an idea that came about from Brent, our patron and great friend down in the U.S. Virgin Islands in St. John. Think of it as a master class to educate you on all the different concepts, or most of them, that I discuss in the daily videos. Everything from vorticity, the Madden-Julian oscillation, to why are hurricanes larger, like Lorenzo, than others. You know, you think about how small Imelda was. It wasn't a hurricane, but geographically, aerially speaking, on an aerial basis, it wasn't very large. Ike was big. Andrew was small. What makes hurricanes do that? What is a tropical wave? What is the math and the physics behind upper ocean heat content? Things like that. Instead of me telling you all this and trying to produce slides and explain it, I want to make this Hurricane U thing a truly revealing experience. And so I'm going to go on the road and try to sit down with some people and interview them in person to talk about some of these concepts. Some of them I'll do via Skype. Obviously, I can't be everywhere. We don't have that kind of funding. But a lot of this I do want to cover in person, talking with people in person when possible. So that's going to come out next May. Hurricane U, a several-part series that I'll put exclusively on Patreon for probably 30 days, and then I'll make it available on YouTube. Because at the end of the day, I want to benefit everybody when I can, but I want to have people to give people an incentive. Yeah, well, I'll sponsor this. I'll back you for that kind of access. That's what we're going for here. If Netflix was available to everybody for free, they wouldn't have the funding to do the original programming that they do. Now, would they? And it works the same here. So whatever I can do, I will put out at no cost, but we will make sure it benefits our patrons first, and that's coming up. So those are the projects, in addition to what I was talking about with the weather coverage. All right, so we've got the weather projects coming up, the weather coverage, and then the upcoming projects. And that includes, of course, Stories from the Hurricane Highway, the podcast, and then the original series coming up in January. Now, also, talk about, boy, he is ambitious. We have about 300 patrons, plus or minus, and, some will have to depart, and they won't be able to fund this, for several months. I understand that. We will add some. That number will change. We also have our HurricaneTrack Insider base that we've had for over, going back to 2005, about 14 years now. And so we have several hundred people over time that have backed what we're doing here. Friends of HurricaneTrack, if you want to call it that. And I think that it's high time that we have a HurricaneTrack users group meeting. I don't want to call it a convention because we're not quite there yet. It's not like Comic-Con. I don't want to. I got 21,000 YouTube subscribers. When that becomes 2.1 million, sure, we can have a convention. But until then, let's have some meetups next year and try to do it in places where people can get to. And if we have 10 or 15 people at each one of these, I consider that a success. I want to have one in Wilmington, and anybody along the East Coast and Southeast could come to that. I want to have one in Orlando and one in Houston, and we'll do these in May and June. These will be open to our patrons as well as anybody else out there. It won't be exclusive to just our patronage, okay? Anybody that's a fan of what we're doing and you want to come out and say hello, meet everybody who's involved, that's what we're going to do. So stay tuned for that. I'll figure it out. Probably at we'll do it at a Hilton Garden Inn or something. Have a little conference room. People come in. We have a good time. We have a big dinner somewhere. Whatever. It's going to be fun. Wilmington, Orlando, Houston, May and June of next year. Look forward to that. All right. So how can you get involved? Well, Patreon, let's just go back to the main page here real quick. For as little as $1 a month, you join up and you become part of the crowdfunding effort. And even the dollar people are hugely important. Because I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm talking straight from right here, straight from the heart. I would rather have several thousand people pledge $1 than have to ask people for 10, 15, 25 or more at the end of the day. The more people that I can affect with an A, affect, the better. But I also have to fund this. And so balancing those two gives me these tiers that we have here. So I want to make that very clear that the $1 patrons are equally as important to me as our $1,000 patrons because it shows me that people want to support what I'm doing. And it makes a difference. And everything begins to add up. That's why the word crowd is part of crowdfunding. So we do start at $1. And at $10, you become a member of our HurricaneTrack Insider. And at $25, it just becomes even more incredible what you can do. The chance over time that you could eventually go with us on a mission, you can help out. All the way up to $100, $500, $1,000, $3,000. Hadn't had anybody do this one yet. That's coming. I feel it. It's eventually going to happen. We call these the bucket list levels. And I, though, eventually, honestly, I just want it around in here someday. We're not there yet. I need a lot more people so we can switch the, put it this way. What if Netflix emailed you or Amazon Prime and said, you know what, we have so many members now, we're going to lower your monthly fee that we charge, your membership fee. Wouldn't that be nice? That's never going to happen. I want that to happen here. I want to eventually say, you know what, the most you ever have to pledge is $10. And you can choose between $1 to $10 and you get all these benefits. I want to get there within 24 months from now. That would be great. But for now, we do have these multiple levels, and to encourage you to do it, if you're like on the fence, we have different benefits. Okay, so read that. Go to patreon.com/HurricaneTrack, and it tells you about all these different benefits that we have here. Now, to further explain it, let me talk about it here in these bullet points. Okay, all members, like I said, get access to the podcast, the original series that we're going to do, the Hurricane Highway, the television series, if you will. And anything that I ever post on Patreon. All of this stuff that you see over here, well, let me go back. Posts, where are they? Posts, there they are. Anything that I post on Patreon, automatically, like WordPress or blogging, which is WordPress, Twitter, come on, we're trying to find them. Where are they? Published, there they are. Any of these posts that you see here, all of our patrons have access to that the moment that it happens, all right? And that's not going to change. So that's one of the big benefits here. No matter what level you are, as soon as I post something from a quick Twitter-esque kind of like, oh, look at this, just got to look at the euro and it shows whatever, boom, you see it first. And a lot of this I'll publish on Patreon and not in the larger universe of social media. Why? Because you guys are supporting it and you should have the first access. And then it goes on and on and on from there. At $25, in addition to what we're doing on Patreon with the access, but just like I did with the 2018 documentary, I'll put your name in the credits of the upcoming series. After every one of those episodes coming up, all of our $25 patrons who stay with us through, the next several months as we do this, I will put your name in the credits. And if you go and look at the 2018 documentary, and at the end there's that chunk of names, those are our $25 patrons from 2018. And that's big, that's forever. That's going to be out on the internet long after we are gone. So, and then for those that are pledging $100 or more, we'll have that little special thanks go to, and there's only a handful of people that do that, so they get a little bit more attention, so to speak. Your name in lights, as it were, as a way to say, hey, look, thanks for helping out. Now, we do need some producers here. What do producers do? They raise the money and they make stuff happen. That's what, go look at that show on Epix called Get Shorty. Now, we don't need any criminal producers. We don't need anything like that. But we do need producers. Producers raise the money, the capital, to make productions happen. That works whether or not you're talking about theatrical, plays and musicals, or big-time $40, $50, $100, $200 million blockbuster motion pictures. They all take producers. So we have 3 producer spots available. So if you want to be a producer and contribute $1,000, it's just a one-time thing. It's not every month. Message me on Patreon or send me an email. My email is right there on the YouTube description, and I'll put it in the description when I'm done. Hurmark, HURRMARK @gmail.com. We have 3 of those available. If you want to be a producer, $1,000 and you become a producer. So it'll say written, directed by Mark Sudduth, whatever. We already have a few producers that have done in-kind donations, but we have 3 more spots. And yes, your name will show produced by so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. All separate on a title card just for you. So if you're interested in becoming a producer, you want to get into the producing business, let me know, because we can use that to help, because we got a lot of interviews we got to do. There's some expenses involved, and we're going to need to raise some capital. So let me know. All right, these are the patron opportunities coming up. Back to the patron page itself. Remember, you can go to patreon.com, put it back up here, /HurricaneTrack, and that is the home page of what we're doing on Patreon. All right? So we're at 302 patrons. I want that number to grow right there, and I want this number to get up to about 4,500 a month. And let me explain as I wrap things up, what does that do? Well, if you think about it, $3,000 a month is $36,000 a year. That's not all my salary, obviously. Part of that I got to save for taxes, because I get a 1099K from Patreon. And there's operating expenses. You know how this works. Again, it's not like I work somewhere else and then I do this on the side and I'm bringing in 36 grand a year. No, it doesn't work that way. After taxes, after expenses and whatnot, I still need to be able to support my family. And as a career, that kind of income, doing this for 25 years, I'm not making that much money, if you think about it. So this is much more of he's following his passion, and, he obviously loves what he does and must have some great support from his wife kind of thing. And that's true. So I got to get that number higher, not only because it'll help me personally, and it does, but then I can do more in field coverage, all right? And so, that being said, here's my challenge. All of our current patrons, we have 302 of you right now. If everybody goes out and you know somebody, you have to know somebody, Ed, I think he could be a great, or Shirley or whoever. And there might be an Ed and a Shirley, who knows? You know somebody who this is right up their alley. Tell them about it. Talk about it at your next dinner meeting. Talk about it at your next, email group, whatever. Spread the word that we're growing something here that is truly unlike anything else out there on the internet. the back and forth nature, the interaction, what we're doing with the funding, the live cameras, the data collection, there isn't anything else, anything remotely close to this on the internet. So spread the word. Let's get that number up to $4,500 a month, and that will allow me to be 100% independent and all that that implies. Okay? We will be able to do, and it doesn't sound like that much more. It's just a little over a little less than $1,400 more to go. But at that $4,500 mark, to me, it's huge, because then I can divide up a certain amount to cover my family and dedicate all the rest to our operations. So that if I see a snowstorm in the high plains, a big, South Dakota blizzard, and I want to take 3 or 4 cameras out there in January and cover it, I can jump on a plane, rent a vehicle, meet up with our buddy Derek, who lives in Sioux Falls, and cover it. If I want to go up to New England and cover a blizzard in February, we will have the funding to do that, and I don't have to worry about it. All right? So that's how that works. It's crowdfunding, and it's working. So a big congratulations to you all for supporting it. A big thank you from me. You've been very good to me personally. You've been good to my family, because it's helping to ease the burden on them. And that's what this is all set up to do. Jack Conte, I think he's the founder or the president of Patreon, C-O-N-T-E, Jack Conte, is his vision of what Patreon could do to allow creators to fulfill their vision is coming true. And we're doing it in weather and hurricane coverage. That's the main part of it, in ways that are absolutely remarkable. So talk about it. Tell people what's happening, and I hope that you continue to stay involved. I realize that some people are going to have to cancel for now. They might not be interested in things outside of hurricane season. I get that. That's why I try to have other enticing, content coming up. If you're able to boost your patronage from a certain level to another certain level, that is certainly a welcome thing as well. At the end of the day, though, I really do want you to pat yourselves on the back and say, you know what? I have contributed. I'm part of that 302 that have made some things happen this year that nobody else in the world is doing. And this isn't obscure. I'm not making little figurines out of old bubble wrap and saying, hey, look at what I'm doing. I'm not knocking the arts. I'm just, this is not some weird, nobody does that. This is special, and we're doing things because of you guys. So thank you very much. All right? I am going to sign off. We'll get it back over to some kind of a title page here if I can find it. There we go. Any questions at all? Whoops, I accidentally came back. Trying to get rid of that yellow. There we go. That's the other thing I want to be able to do is I want to get a huge screen, touch screen TV computer thing and start doing it with that. Make it more high-end. But we'll worry about that later. This telestration that I got here, the annotation, it works good. And by the way, it's called Ink to Go. People have asked me about that. That's the program right there. It's called Ink to Go. If you want to know how to do this yourself, it's a little shareware program out there. Ink to Go, I-N-K-E, the number 2, G-O, Ink to Go. Where was I? Trying to sign off. If you have any questions for me, message me directly on Patreon. You can do that. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can post a comment there. You can email me, Hurmark, H-U-R-R-M-A-R-K, @gmail.com, and let me hear from you. Any questions you might have, any offers of support, whatever, let me know. We are doing stuff that is absolutely the most incredible of its kind, and you are the reason behind it. Don't forget that. Seriously. I thank you. Thank yourselves as well. We're all part of it. That's what makes crowdfunding so awesome. Have a great rest of your, whatever today is, the 30th of September. It's the last day of the month. I can't believe it. Have a great rest of your evening. As always, thank you for watching and listening to whatever I have to say. I appreciate it. More than you know. I am Mark Sedeth for the HurricaneTrack brand. Moving forward over the next 12 months, we're going to do even more amazing stuff thanks to you. Thanks for watching. I'll have more for you tomorrow when we get into the hurricane outlook and discussion as we start the month of October.